Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for today's Tao Te Ching reading and the translation. We will start from chapter 29. As usual, our format, we will have at least the 2 reading about the translation on chapter 29. And after that, Amang and I are going to share our work, our translation, and we will come with a few brief explanation. And then you can ask your question, express what do you learn from this chapter, and please focus on the specific chapter. And after that, after 2 hours, and you will have a free time to discuss what's Tao Te Ching in general. So let's start. So we have Josh and Stephanie. Josh.
Where do I find the chapter?
Chapter 29. Do you have your own translation? If you don't, then that's fine. Okay, then we go to another person. So we will have Stephanie and Kwang. Stephanie, please.
Hi, thank you. Oops, can you hear me? Okay. So what translation are you using?
We use our own translation. So if you have your version, then you can read. If you don't, then that's fine. We will share with you.
Oh, but do you can you say like what translation you're using?
No, we don't have a specific translation. So that's fine.
Yeah,
okay.
We
Okay.
are actually producing our own translation. And so you can use any translation you'd like to read from. We're kind of doing a compare and contrast.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so let's go to Kwang and Joe. Kwang, please.
Okay, so translation by Professor Mose Roberts, stanza 29. Whoever mean to take this realm and rule it, I see them failing to attain that end. For this realm below, a sacred vessel, never may be subject to such rule. They rule in it who try, lose it who hold on. All living things of form now move ahead, now train behind. Now breathe hot, now cold, now wax strong, now fade. Now are safely set, but soon will fall. And so the wise stay far from all extremes, all surfeit, all grandeur.
Okay, thank you, Kwang. Joe, please.
Yeah, so I will be reading the Jia Fu Fang. Do you think you can change over the universe and improve it? Or you can take over the universe and improve it? I do not believe it can be done. The universe is scared or sacred. Sorry. You cannot improve it. If you try to change it, you will ruin it. If you try to hold it, you will lose it. So sometimes things are ahead and sometimes they are behind. Sometimes breathing is hard. Sometimes it comes easily. Sometimes there is strength and sometimes weakness. Sometimes one is up and sometimes down. Therefore, the sage avoids extremes, excesses, and complacency.
Thank you, Joe. Should we go another one? Or okay, Faham, you have your version to read?
Yes.
Please.
Those who wish to take the world and control it, I see that they cannot succeed. The world is a sacred instrument. One cannot control it. The one who controls it will fail. The one who grasps it will lose. Because all things either lead or follow, either blow hot or cold, either have strength or weakness, either have ownership or taken by force. Therefore the sage, eliminates extremes, eliminates excess, eliminates arrogance.
Thank you. Faham, who is the translator?
Derek Lin.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's what I guess. So, Catherine, you want to read your version or you just have some
Yeah, I have a Mies and Hall.
comment? Okay.
If someone wants to rule the world and goes about trying to do so, I foresee that they simply will not succeed. The world is a sacred vessel, and it is not something that can be ruled. Those who would rule it ruin it. Those who would control it lose it. In the way of things, some move ahead while others follow behind. Some breathe to warm themselves while others breathe to cool themselves down. Some are strong while others are disadvantaged. Some accumulate while others collapse. It is for this reason that the sages eschew the excess, the superlative, and the extravagant.
All right, thank you, Catherine. Okay, so let me share the translation. We are working on chapter 29. So can you see it? Okay.
Might want to make it a little larger on the screen, Jason, but chapter 29, by itself. Those who want to gain the world, I do not see it as possible. The world is a spiritual being. No one can control it. Those who try to control it will fail. Those who grasp at it will lose it. For this reason, the sage practices wu-wei, so he never fails. He practices non-control, so he never loses. Regarding non-spiritual things, some go forwards, some follow behind. Some are warm, some are cool. Some are strong, some weak. Some are defeated, some collapse by themselves. For this reason, things are unpredictable. The sage avoids extremes, extravagance, and arrogance.
Thank you, Amam. Okay, I think this one, the teaching is I will assume the audience is the prince. Okay, it's a political teaching, and I believe this chapter is produced during the warring state, which is later than Confucius. Even in general, we consider the author, Laozi, is before Confucius, but I believe this chapter is produced during the time of warring state, which has many states conquer it, have a war against each other, and the purpose is they all try to control the world, okay, the political world, basically in China. So that's why talking about those who want to gain the world, take advantage of the world, control the world, I don't see it's possible. And the Laozi, the author, try to say the world is a spiritual thing. So here the word 神气, okay, Shen in general, I translate spirit or spiritual being. Okay, and I know some translation, most of the translation will translate as sacred. Okay, Shen means God. So a lot of people will translate as sacred. But I think here, the author tried to talk about the world is not a tangible thing. It's a spiritual thing. So you have no way to conquer by the force. Because the second part is talking about the thing, wu, okay, talk about the tangible thing, okay. The tangible thing, basic is either go forward, leading, or go behind, either warm or cool, either strong or weak. It will collect by itself or collect by outside world. So that means it's not predictable. You have no way to control it. Okay. So here, in a way, you can say the author try to teach the prince don't use force. Okay, and try to tell them use force is impossible. Okay, and so that's what I get on this one. So finally, the sage avoid extreme extravagance and arrogance. I think that these three is very important about Laozi or Dao De Jing's idea. Okay, so extreme, I think he tried to ask the prince to avoid the extreme idea. Extravagance, try to make sure your action is not extravagance, and make sure your attitude is not arrogance. So I think that last line serve as a warning or the teaching to the prince, to the future ruler. That's what I get for this chapter. So I will have Armand have your explanation.
Thank you, Jason. And thank you, everybody. Let me just take a moment to say I really appreciate the large amount of interest in our translation and in the Tao Te Ching, and seeing so many first-time faces and so many people who are actually interested. It's really gratifying and it's really heartwarming. When we tackle a piece like this, we have, for years now, agonized on taking Chinese words and turning them into some English approximation. Translation from a source to a target language is a balancing act of trying to honor the source language and trying to be as comprehensible as possible in the target language. And I think we've struck a better balance and better balance as we've done more and more of these. Just an example, that phrase that Jason was pointing to, 天下善气, literally translating under heaven spiritual tool. I think that actually, as a way of expressing to a princeling who would be the audience of this text, that the world is a spiritual being, makes more sense. It's not comprised just of the land you grab, the persons you conscript, the wealth that you can hoard. And because of that, this winds up being a very timeless chapter in the Tao Te Ching, because it has an enduring message of understanding enough's enough, not being a Wendigo that is just feeding its own starvation that can never be satisfied. I very much think that our translation reads in a way that is comprehensible, and maybe not quite as flourishing as some of the other translations. This is also the balancing act that comes with translation, is there's never translation without interpretation, but it's on a spectrum. And so trying to be as verbatim as possible is not going to happen, because the grammar doesn't work, the words don't work, and being completely interpretive to the point of it being modern dance loses a lot of what is the core teachings, what are the core voice that Lao Tzu is trying to impart here. Wu-wei is probably the number 1, 2, and 3 lesson of the Dao De Jing. How to act with wu-wei, how to do enough, how to strive enough, and enough being the constant key word, because Lao Tzu's caution is that overdoing it is just a recipe for disaster. That was his diagnosis of the failings of the Zhou dynasty that preceded his time. They overdid it, and because they overdid it, they're now in a decadent decline. It is worth mentioning, sort of contextually, we're looking at the end of what was one of the largest, biggest, most powerful empires in Chinese history, especially to that point. And everyone is watching these warring states start to pop up and rattle their sabers. and ask themselves, what went wrong? And so Lao Tzu's answer to this is they got greedy. They got greedy. They got self-absorbed. They thought themselves the kings of all that was under heaven. And now they're suffering under its collapse. Just like hit the last verse or the last portion here, some are defeated, some collapse by themselves. That's not only referencing individual kingdoms, but any grand enterprise. So I hope this you get something from this, and I'm excited to hear everybody else's interpretations or understandings from this. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Amam. Okay, so we have Faham and Joe, then Darren. Faham, please.
Yeah, if I may, I wanted to add my interpretation of this. I think it's a very deep teaching. It's talking about not pursuing control over life in the world, which is pretty much what most people are doing actually in the world, which is the source of all the anxiety. People think they should be in control, and they try to control things. And because of failure to do so, they fall into this anxious state, this anxiety. And the way or the Tao is talking about not pursuing such a control and instead going with the flow, which is ultimately an effortless state. And by being in that state, you're in absolute harmony with everything, and you're experiencing a state of joy. So it's a timeless teaching. It's a very deep lesson. It's something that most people are missing in their life, and most people don't believe such a thing exists. Most people don't believe that the universe holds them if they try to be in a state of flow with the universe, and they are constantly in a state of struggling to make things the way they think should be, which is not the way it should be.
Thank you, Faham. Okay, Joe, please.
Yeah, I mean, I like this version as well. The particular part, I mean, about it being sacred, I think is, very important and important to focus on, because once something has lost its sacredness, then it's no longer revered. And once it's not revered, it kind of falls into, just who can dominate the other one. Because when you hold something in reverence, you don't necessarily try and dominate it. You try and maintain it. And so for me, I mean, I think that that's a really important point, because if you think about individuals or institutions where they are no longer held sacred, they often fall apart. So, I mean, that really is an important part of this, because if you relate it to, to the overall message, I think it's, that's where it really starts for me. The other aspect of it that I think, this is a really timely type of passage as well, because sometimes, in today's world in particular, with technology, we tend to think that we have a whole lot more control than we do. And how even the idea of predictability, how certain we are about our predictions, not really understanding the limitations of the information that we're actually taking in. So again, that comes back to this idea that, you think you can dominate the world, you think you know how it works, and it really, there's a lack of humility, fundamental humility in the whole passage. I really like the play of the opposites. And I think that when a society is really out of balance, when it's too masculine or too feminine, you see and notice that. And that balance needs to be struck, because that is something I would absolutely say that leads to domination in a sense. There's some that will often say that the West is too masculine, and that it's very much about dominating nature as opposed to working with it. And so and that's a generalization, of course. I'm not necessarily but you can you can relate it to being an overly masculine society and approach. Last thing is, I have to put this in for the Stoic perspective, and I was away with Jason on a Stoic seminar. So this idea of control, you really don't control these things. And so that's important for your own personal tranquility as well for the rest of the world. Manage your character and not the rest of the world.
All right. Thank you, Joe. Darren, please. I
just
know
have
you have a question about the bracket in the
that's it.
Chinese text.
Yeah,
I
that's my
forget
question.
where I see there's some version. Okay. Kwame may know, I don't know, but they have some version. They have this one, Sheng wu-wei, wu-bai. So I put in the bracket because I'm not sure. Okay. Because some version has this line, some version doesn't. So I put in the bracket. In general, I put in the bracket because sometimes it's misplaced. Sometimes it's in different version they have the different text. So it's common in the ancient text. So that's my only answer, unless other people have a better answer.
Thanks, Jason.
Darren, you have another comment? Or...
No, that's it. I was just wondering about that. I'm
okay.
I'm
thank
still
you.
thinking about the whole chapter.
Yeah, thank you. Kwang, please.
Yes, before going to my comment, the three major versions that we have of the Tao Te Ching is the receiver version, meaning the version from the Imperial Academy of 124 BCE, the Ma Wang Tui version, which dated to 160 BCE, and the Kotian version, which dated to 300 BCE. So sometimes you have stuff that are present in one version and absent in the other version. So Jason has been very comprehensive by adding the stuff in bracket. So
yeah, usually I don't admit, right? Usually whatever appear in some version, I try to put there. So I just make my effort to translate. So if you find out it doesn't fit, then you just remove it. So that's my.
Since I'm sure that we will discover other versions in the next 50 years, you would maybe have to add 5 brackets in your future translation. That being said, I have to say that I want to make some historical comments because the Chinese Empire has been created for the first time in 221 BCE. Okay, I'm speaking of the empire, I'm not speaking of the kingdoms. The dynasty which created the empire in 221 BCE prepared itself for 140 years, maybe from 361 BCE to 221 BCE, for creating the empire. But precisely, they did not read stanza 29 seriously, because from 221 BCE to 206 BCE, meaning only in 15 years, they make immense changes that will modify China for the next 2,000 years, but they have done it in such an exaggerated way, let's say with too much enthusiasm, precisely, to come back to the notion that Aman mentioned maybe 10 minutes ago. It's very difficult to be exactly in the center. Sometimes it's not enough and sometimes it's too much, okay? So being exactly at the center is very difficult. And that glorious dynasty, named Qin, and China is named after that dynasty, Qin. So they only ruled China as emperor for 15 years, but at least for their efforts, China nowadays is named after them. But because they were not balanced, they lost the power for the next dynasty, the Han Dynasty, and that Han Dynasty learned that lesson, and they would last 400 years. So I stop here.
Thank you, Kwang. Stephanie, please.
All right, thank you. So this is my first time here, and I have like 3 groupings of questions. So I think I'm just gonna read them, and then like anyone could address anything that I have here.
Okay.
So I was looking at your translation and how it was divided into 3 parts.
Mhm.
And I kind of consider them like, let's say stanzas, right? So the first part I felt was like about the spiritual. And one question has to do with that because I know some translations said sacred, and then you explained how you used spiritual instead. And then you said that the audience for this was the prince. And this was about, talking about war. And that war, I thought you said war or the world is a spiritual thing.
Yeah.
So was it war or the world?
The world. Okay.
The world. Okay. So I'm looking at like the first stanza is spiritual. The second stanza is non-spiritual, right?
That's right.
So then the third, like the third stanza you put, for this reason, things are unpredictable. So does that mean everything, like the spiritual and the non-spiritual?
Okay, just hold on. So thank you.
Okay.
So I put a parenthesis here. So in general, when I put a parenthesis, it means it's not in the text. That's my own interpretation. So if you have to direct translate the Chinese word, that means for this reason, the sage avoid extremes, extravagance, and arrogance. Okay, this is not in the text. That's my own interpretation. Technically, sometimes I will remove this one, but this one I just decide to keep here. So because here,
I just wanted to add to that. Yeah, sometimes we will include parentheticals to make something clearer or to elaborate on something, like the fact that regarding non-spiritual things, because in the reading, Chinese is highly contextual. And so you won't have necessarily subject, verb, or object, especially in traditional Chinese. And we needed to add these to help point the reader in the direction of where the reference is going. Sorry, Jason.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you. I hope it's clear to you. And then here we say translate. Okay, some go forward, some follow. Because you see, that's object. Some warm, some cool, some strong, some weak. That means it's changing. Okay, so you don't know what's going on. That's why you cannot control it. So that's my understanding. Go ahead.
Okay, and then the last part that I was wondering about, like I heard someone talking about like go with the flow. And so I'm kind of wondering, we could say we know what that means, but like you have to, I'm just imagining, you have to like be able to tap into something, like hear it, not literally though, but or feel it, some kind of intuition. And I don't know if this text says anything, like if this part is like go with the flow, moderation, well, whoever is acting must have some kind of knowledge to be able to do that, to know how to do that. So one thing I'm wondering if the text somewhere states how to do that, And the other part is about like one's will or agency.
Okay.
That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the this question. Okay, go with flow. Okay, it's not here, right? So that's I think that's Joe say it. Okay, and that's Joe's understanding. Okay, so okay, I'm not saying he's wrong or he's right. That's his understanding, and because the text doesn't have go with flow, so
It was
you
Faham.
can. It's fine.
Sorry, Jason.
Okay.
It was
That
Faham.
doesn't matter. Okay, so so if the text doesn't have this one, and this one doesn't tell you how to do it. Okay, I just have to be honest with you. So you have to decide what you probably want to decide. Go with the flow. You probably want to decide. I will be humble, or you probably want to decide whenever in this situation I will have my hands off. Okay, to watch. That's it. So that's for you to decide
Can
what to do. Thank you.
Since it's related to my comment, can I address it?
Yeah, please. Yeah, let me join you.
Yeah, so the question of how getting into the flow or understanding the flow is addressed by going inward.
Okay.
So one of the main states, like mental states of being that you should aspire to be in is the state of surrender. Surrender is like the substrate of all religions. Like if you study Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, or Abrahamic religions, Islam, they all talk about what really they're talking about is surrender. Surrender is one of the main paths to enlightenment, and by being in the state of surrender, you're actually not exerting any force. You are just going with the flow, and that's when the highest rate of synchronicities happen in your life, and yeah, experience like actual wealth, and again, like experience the harmony of the universe. So surrender is again, like people see themselves as a separate being from the universe, and because of that they fall into this state of fear. And to address this fear, they try to take control over the world. And because they cannot control the world, they fall into this state of anxiety. The problem is they are not a separate being from the universe in the first place. By understanding this, the fear never emerged, and they don't need to control anything. Everything is already under control. You just need to surrender to the control.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Farhan, for your interpretation. So again, we will have our own interpretation, and here is the place for you to share your interpretation and or you want to ask your question. Thank you very much for Madeline, please.
Yeah, hi. Welcome back. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you. Great to be back.
Yeah, I wish this could just go on forever.
We will.
Although you guys probably feel like it's been going on forever. I was wondering if you could put the translation back up on the screen again.
Yeah, it's on the screen right now. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay. I can't see it. I did something with the screen. I clicked through the link of the thing. I clicked through the link and now I've lost most of the Zoom capabilities. Like, I can't see the comment. I can't see anything.
You didn't see the screen? Everyone see the screen, right? See the translation? Yeah.
I can see the faces, but not
it's there.
Okay.
Hey. Well, I wonder if you jumped out and back in, Madeline, if that might work. That might take a moment, but it might clear it up.
Okay, now I've actually created a second screen that has the translation.
Okay, great.
All right, thanks for your patience. I can't see it. So there we go. I had been wondering about the second line, the world is a spiritual being, and also about the first line in the third stanza. And Aman, you had said something about the literal translation is below heaven's spiritual tool.
Mhm.
Yeah, actually, even reverse that. It'd be heaven below spirit utensil tool.
Yeah, you send out the spirit, this word, the third word, son. Okay, there's many translation. Okay, on the surface it means God. Okay, or also means spiritual. Okay, so and that's why a lot of translation will translate as a sacred. Okay, so but for the entire text, I consistently translate this word as spirit.
Okay. And that's the sun.
And
So and
Tian
then qi, okay.
Chao. Oh, I was just
Tianxia,
going to
under the
just
word,
yeah,
okay. I
all
translate
under
as the
heaven.
word. Yeah, under the heaven. Yeah, I think that right now I kind of see the advantage to use the word under the heaven. Okay, but I consistently translate as the word. Okay, and here there's the two words, right? 天地, heaven and the earth. I translate as the nature. Okay, that means the nature world. And when they say under the heaven, I translate as the word, which means the political world. So in another way, this word doesn't include American or Europe. Okay, only include China. It's under the heaven. Okay, that's put it. It's a political word. Okay, so when they say conquer the world, they are not care about the Europe or Roman Empire. They only care about is the China, this middle land. Okay, so.
Thank you. Those were, I was going to ask the meaning of heaven. Was it that, thing I remembered which it was?
Yeah, I have to admit that I can do it better. Okay, so right now I see the advantage to using the under the heaven versus and also use 天地 as heaven and the earth. Okay, so
I threw into chat, my translation has it as sacred vessel.
yeah, sacred vessel is another way to translate, but that's why I
Senti.
explained. Yeah, I don't see they talk about sacred, and I'm not sure sacred is a concept in ancient China. Okay, I don't see that the sacred is a concept, religious sacred, this kind of thing. So I do see Laozi or Dao De Jing, I understand it about this word is not a tangible word, it's a spiritual concept. So you should not use the force to conquer. Okay, so it's more spiritual, more intangible. Okay, so that's why I decide to translate to spiritual being or what to. That's the reason. Yeah, of course we can discuss. They always have many ways to interpret.
And then, thank you. The first line of the second stanza regarding non-spiritual things.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I put a parentheses, right? So that means there's no non-spiritual here. I just my own interpretation because in Chinese called wu wu. Okay. Wu. Okay. This word I translate the second word wu. I translate as things. Okay. So which means the tangible things, and the tangible means non-spiritual. Okay. So that's why I put the parentheses as a non-spiritual. But the Chinese word only say 物物. Okay, 或行或随. Okay, so that means 或 means all, or I think some translation I heard is about now, but I think the better way is sometimes. Okay, and you will see the words are all opposite. So I think this word probably means it could be this way, could be the other way, could be white, could be black, could be up, could be down. So that means it's no way to predict. That's my understanding. That's why later on I put the things are unpredictable to try to make it clear. But technically in the original text, they don't have these words.
Thank you, Jason.
Gu is actually part of my Chinese name. Gu Hanmo. And there it means old or ancient, but it can also mean an instance or a happening or regarding. And so you can use it like the word hence or therefore.
Thank you, Amam. Okay, so we have Joe and Mark. Joe, please.
Yeah, I mean, I really appreciated the idea of how it requires one to look in order to act out. And obviously there are a lot of traditions that, focus on that specifically. And the reason why I think it's actually meaningful is because then it means that you're actually listening and not dominating. So that, if you're trying to dominate, then, you're continuously trying to take over the conversation, just in this in a very practical way. Not let others speak. You're trying to own, the relationship. And so, it's kind of like you think about it with not only your relationship with people, but your relationship with nature. And a lot of this stems from the idea of, you can call it ego or pride or however you wish to actually, frame it. So and that comes back to the previous comment that I made, how it relates back to humility from that perspective. So, I think that the idea of looking in, and we all know the Confucius saying, where essentially, he's going through the whole world, then to himself, change himself, before, he has to change, before trying to change the whole world. And I think that that's one of the key points here, obviously, because it does focus on the relationship with the cosmos versus dominating it.
Thank you, Joe. Mark, please.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I have two questions, probably for Jason and Amon, or maybe for anybody else who's a native speaker. First, I'd like to start by reading the definition of Chen in my dictionary. It's got 6 definitions. 1 is God deity, 2 is supernatural, magical, mysterious, 3 is spirit, mind, energy, 4 is lively, expressive, 5 is look or expression, and 6 is awesome or amazing. So when you translate, understand you have to choose a word in English, which is the best word that you think represents it. But in general, it's my impression that when you translate anything, and I think this is more true from Chinese to English than probably a lot of other languages, the word that you choose in English doesn't really overlap super precisely with the meaning in the original language. And then, so I'm interested in 2 things. One, how does the word spirit not capture what Shen means in modern Chinese? And then the second question is, how could Shen have been different in meaning at the time this was written, especially prior to European contact, than it's interpreted now, even in modern China? That's it. Thank you.
Among you want to answer this one? I can answer it. One is you talk about the modern Chinese. So, for example, Shen, this word, right? In Chinese Bible, that's the God. Okay. So, but that's why I disagree on a lot of translation will translate as a sacred, okay, because they see this word as a God, and then they will consider as God's vessel, okay. So I think that's a little bit too Christian or Judaism understanding, okay, as the Dao De Jing. That's my opinion. So probably that's reflect what Mark's question about the modern meaning or ancient meaning. Okay, so another word is yeah, I think there's a lot of example like this, but here I think I use Shen as the word one is very common, in this case. Among you have any comment on this?
No, I was actually having a little bit of trouble hearing what Mark was saying, but when it comes to the bias of presentism when translating text, that is something that you actually catch in a lot of other translations. And it's something that we do try and control for, because Jason's right. a singular idea of God was not present in Warring States China or in the Springs and Autumns period or the Zhou Dynasty. Even the concept of, Shen Di, that was pretty aloof. I know, Quan, you could probably talk more on this than I can, but the idea of sort of spirit as a presence or that spirits abound. When Lao Tzu is saying the world is a spiritual place, Qian Sha Shen Qi, he's saying that you are observing the wrong portion of the world if you are just thinking of Tiandi, heaven and earth, the physical planes, the things you're looking at day to day, and that there is something continuous, something greater than a point removed. This is in some way a veiled reference to the Tao as well, that what the world is really is operating on planes of existence outside of your attention or understanding. I do get how people would translate this differently, and that translation of sacred vessel verbatim, that would actually be not so bad. But when you talk about vessel or tool or something useful, you kind of go back to that physicality context that Lao Tzu is trying to disabuse his audience of.
Yeah, thank you, Amang. Another thing I'd like to mention is this foreword, 天下神器, okay, has been used through the history. I talk about history, I mean the last 2,000 years, when people writing in the political turmoil, okay, revolution, people will talk about 天下神器, okay. The word is a spiritual being, or you want to talk about words. The later interpretation, they quote from Laozi, means more Confucius, the heaven and the human interaction. Talking about this word is only given to the ordained, the God, not governed, the heaven, okay, the son of heaven, okay. So I think the later interpretation, they even use the same word, but has a lot of Confucius or Neo-Confucius or the Han Dynasty Confucius interpretation about heaven's vessel, okay, something like this. So I do believe the text, original text, is not in this sense, okay. Again, that's my personal understanding, and that's why I interpret, I translate it this way. So, okay, let's hear how other people talking about this. We have Nick, Kwang, and Darren. Nick, please.
Yeah, thanks. I want to echo Mark's sentiment. Yeah, I also found the spirit a bit disconcerting in translating the Chinese character for the following reason. What's going on? So let's understand what's going on, what he's trying to say. And then we can decide what kind of literal translation is most appropriate. What he is saying basically is that humans should not do what the divinity does. That's his main point, right? There's a separation of what we as human can do and what could be done, should be done, have been done, is being done by divinity. So that's the whole idea. And therefore, he's saying, don't try to do the things that you're not equipped, you're not able to do. So therefore, the translation of the Sen into spirit it's a bit disconcerting in the sense that humans have spirit. So in that sense, I guess Mark's concern, especially in the modern contemporary usage of Chinese of the word spirit. It's a blur. It makes that separation between human and divinity blurry. So yeah, thanks.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Nick. Okay, so basically, let me summarize your argument. You disagree. Okay, you spiritual. You think that should be more divine, or the world is belong to the God or God given than the human spiritual. So that's your point, right? Nick, am I understand you correctly?
Yes, because
Okay, great.
you know
Great.
so that we have to understand what his underlining argument. Otherwise, it
Okay.
would just be the feel good the advices from old ages.
Okay, that's right. We always preserve agree on our disagreement. So that's great.
I'm gonna
One thing
take I'm going to take prerogative here and say, Nick, I disagree with you. And I am going to back this up with this is a lesson in something humans can do. Humans are spiritual beings, like you said, and that is what he is actually coaching his student to gain contact with and be guided more by something that they do have access to. This isn't simply about the Tao does this, you are independent, you are not the Tao, therefore don't try and pretend or behave like you are. It's the Tao does this, you have this in you as well. Do try to understand that and let go of your illusions of being able to control. So I'm going to respectfully disagree, but I do appreciate the point.
Well, back to this point. I can see Nick's interpretation is very reasonable, and I probably have to say probably that's the majority. Okay, will take the Nick's point because in the later development, this text become the religious text. So it will go to the religious route. So it's totally understandable and totally reasonable to think this way. And I would believe majority probably will take this point of view. So, okay, thank you very much for. So here is the place to express your understanding, your opinion, agree, disagree, that's totally fine. That's why we are here. Kwang and Derek, Kwang, please.
Yes, I would like to introduce maybe a contrast between Shen, which denotes more a very big meaning of spirituality or spiritual, okay, of the divine realm, and what I would call God in the political sense of the word, okay, because let's not forget that this text is around 400 BCE. Under the Shang dynasty, which began in 1600 BCE, meaning 1200 years before that text, the king of the Shang dynasty had a supreme being ruling over the universe and, of course, over China. And that God, because I think we can translate that by God with a capital G, was called Shangdi. Okay, and Shangdi, word by word, means the Lord on high. Okay, so for the people having Christian culture here, they would not be surprised that it's called the Lord on high. And that Lord on high, Shangdi, when come the souls of the dead Shang kings to the heaven, and the dead Shang king would be called Ti, meaning a lord, but not the Lord on high, because Lord on high is the chief, let's say. And there is a political hierarchy, meaning that only the Shang king can sacrifice to the Lord on high, and the feudal lords in their principalities would sacrifice to the sacred mountain, to the sacred river of their principalities. Okay, so It was very hierarchical, and when the Zhou dynasty took over in 1046, the name of Shangdi changed to Tian Heaven, but it was the same concept. Okay, it was their chief in heaven, and when they die, they ascend to heaven to be with him, and because of that, they have a certain prestige compared to the lower lords who can only sacrifice to the mountains or to the rivers. Why I say that? Because here we have a text of the 400 BCE, meaning 1,000 years at least after the political system. And here I think that Lao Tzu wanted to stress the fact that every human being has that sacred spiritual nature that is not related to their political status. So it was an advancement in the maturity of human consciousness, if you want. And I would like to take 1 minute to read the comment by Professor Mose Roberts that I think is very related to the discussion we have in the last 10 minutes or the 15 minutes. I start the quotation. The ruler who puts from himself the will to aggrandizement is as respectful of living things as he is of religious objects. He observes things in their growth and decline, but makes no effort to control or exploit them. As sacred to him as the temple vessels, the 10,000 shall not be desecrated by appropriation. Okay, so his subjects are not his slaves. Okay, that is the main point of the spiritual advancement of the book of Tao Te Ching, in my opinion. The term sheng qi, sacred object or sacred vessel, in the first half of the stanza is contrasted with wu, living things, in the second half. One example of a sacred vessel as a symbol of political power would be the sacrificial tripod, the thing of the Zhou, son of heaven, that the messenger from Chu coveted for his king. I stop here.
Thank you, Kwam. Okay, sounds like the Dr. Roberts in understanding is very similar to my understanding. So it's opposite spiritual and wu. Okay, that's a totally opposite. So listen from the comment. So this insert, okay, is make a lot of sense. Okay, so basically talk about that's the spiritual vessel, spiritual being. You cannot try to control it. Therefore, for this reason, the sage practiced wu-wei, so he has never failed. Okay, he practiced non-control, so he never loses. So this insert, I don't know it should be there or not, but some version is there. So this one probably make it clear to answer this one. But while you are talking about the history about the Song Dynasty, I kind of thinking about probably Shen Qi. Another possibility is means really a tangible thing. They have the 9 ding. Okay, the really have the stuff there. Okay, called ding. Okay, so who own this? Really, you. That's the symbol of you control the world. Okay, it could be this meaning. So we don't know, but it's open for everyone's interpretation. So, okay, Darren and Steve, then we probably have to move on. So, Darren, please.
Okay, I just threw a link in the chat regarding the origin of the character Sun, or in Mandarin it's Sun. I speak Cantonese, so I'm going to be using Cantonese pronunciations, Sun. So I think maybe it has a clue to how to understand the meaning of this. Again, like these aren't obviously, we don't want to commit that fallacy, the what do you call genetic fallacy, where the etymology necessarily defines the meaning for its use. So that's a fallacy in philosophy. But I think it has clues, right? Especially because this text was written in such a very early period. So the left part of the character is actually represents And remember, so if you click the link, you'll see what this character actually looked like, 2,500 years ago, which is very different than what it looks like now. So, it gradually evolved. So the left part was originally an ancestral tablet. And so ancestral tablets are used for worshiping the dead. It's a it's a very Chinese Confucian thing, the importance of worshiping your ancestors and the dead. So they're not bodily, basically. They're still around, but they don't have a body. So that it does something, it does suggest something spiritual. Maybe you're uncomfortable with all the connotations around the word spiritual in English, but in the Chinese, if it's about an ancestral tablet and it's about worshiping dead people, it is something about something immaterial, okay? That and people who still continue to exist in this immaterially. And then the right part of the word sun is so again, it doesn't look like it now. The modern character, you have to click the link to see what it originally looks like. The right part was actually lightning. So lightning, like suggesting something powerful or mysterious or unknown. Because people didn't know what caused lightning way back then, and it was scary. So yeah. So anyway, so that's just yeah. Thank you, Aman. Yeah. So the right part's lightning. He just threw the pictures in the chat, and the left part's an ancestral tablet for worshiping the dead. So you can just sort of get at like this combination of mysterious powerful forces you don't really understand, and also like dead people who continue to exist immaterially. You can get a sense of what this word might be getting at. It might be in the minds of people who use these symbols to express this idea of sun. Okay, so whatever you want to make of it, I'm just saying that this might have clues, right? It is something immaterial and something mysterious, and like that. And I think people were scared of people were always scared of ghosts, right? I don't know. Anyway, I'm done.
Right. Thank you, Darren. Okay, so I think the spirit probably have a different understanding, like Holy Spirit, and some translation were Holy Ghost, right? So probably ghost will make more sense in this case. I think Holy Spirit, Holy Ghost, that's a two word to read, but in Bible. So really, a lot of time really depend on how you understand the spiritual. So at least in Chinese understanding is after you die, your spirit still there. Okay, unlike a lot of in modern understanding, your spirit is your energy or something. If you die, you have no spirit. So that's a two different way to understand what's the meaning of spirit. Yeah.
Can I actually say one more thing? Sorry, I forgot.
Please.
The other thing I wanted to say was regarding the word following sun. So that's hey. That means instrument, or how the other people utensil or whatever. So I thought, so you've translated this as the world is a sacred instrument.
I translate as a spiritual being.
Oh, sorry. I was looking at Derek Lin. I'm sorry. Yeah.
There is an instrument. Yeah. That's
way too many translations open.
Yeah.
Right. A spiritual being.
Understood. Right. Yeah.
Sorry. The world is a spiritual being. Okay. I have like 6 or 7 translations open. Okay, spiritual being.
Yeah.
So I think
in Confucius analect, I will translate this word qi as a vessel, because the Chinese Confucius doesn't see the qi as a good word. That means you are being
for sure
targeted in the certain purpose. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a Confucius understanding. So here is the Dao De Jing. So I may have a little bit different. So
okay, yeah, I'll be interested to hear how you think that might differ for Confucianism, because you're right. Like this last word, hey, instrument, it's very important in Confucianism. Is like a negative, is a bad thing. Like you don't want to be like, there are instruments, those are good, but you don't want to become like one. So that's that's a problem Confucians have with with and why it's an important word or concept in Confucianism. But okay, so the thing I wanted to say is so you sun, hey, so it can be spirit. Sorry, where's your translation again? Spiritual being, or the world is a spiritual being. Derek Lin says the world is a sacred instrument. I think, I don't know if this makes a big difference, but another different way of looking at it, because again, I'm thinking of this because this word is so important in Confucianism. So so the author of this text, I feel like, must be aware of its significance. So he might be saying that the world is the spirit's, or whatever, or whatever sacred's instrument. So it's not saying sacred instrument or spiritual being. It's saying like the spirit's instrument, or the sacred being's instrument, whatever that might be. Um, and and so we can't control. Anyway, I'm just saying that I don't know if that makes a big difference, but it's so instead of saying sacred or spiritual as an adjective, it's more like a noun actually, and then so it's saying the world is the spirit's or the sacred being or whatever instrument. It's the instrument of the spirit or of spirits or whatever, and thus you can't control it. You will fail if you try to control it. If you grasp it, you can't. You'll lose it, and so on and so forth. So anyway, I'm not like attached to this approach, but I'm just saying it's maybe perhaps another way of looking at it, and maybe maybe it sheds light on something. I don't know.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's Steve, please.
Hey there. So I was intrigued by what Quan was describing. So the idea of a separate being that is controlling the universe feels like a very Western idea to me. A monotheistic thing, which came later and in a whole other part of the world. But what you were describing sounded like a similar idea in very ancient China, and I didn't know that. I come to I come to it from a philosophical point of view more than a religious point of view, so maybe that's why I wasn't aware of that. But so, are you saying in ancient China in Taoism particularly? My concept of it is it's not a separate being that's in control. It's the world itself. It is the nature of the world itself that he's talking about. And what you were describing sounded like a separate being in juxtaposition to that, which did not, to me, that's a Western idea. So I was intrigued by that, and I'd be interested to learn a little bit more.
That's a very Chinese idea too, because it's very intimately related to what in the academic books is called the feudal religion. Okay, because there is a concept in ancient China that the rites or the rituals are for the gentlemen, and the gentlemen are from the kings to the barons and the scholars, and they are customs for the people. And among the idea for the gentlemen is that the original ancestor of the Shang dynasty was a son of that Shang Di. Okay, meaning that the successive kings after the first one were his
a justification for him being king is that he's descended from this.
Exactly. So they would be the son, the grandson, the great-grandson, the great-great-grandson of the Lord on high. If I give you a very contemporary example, the emperors of Japan are the great-great-great-great-grandson of the goddess of the sun, Amaterasu, right? So in ancient China, in 1600 BCE, it was the same thing, but it was not the goddess of the sun, Amaterasu, but it was the guy named, well, not the guy, but it was God for the Chinese of the time, Shangdi, okay, the Lord on high. The lesser feudal lords, they cannot speak to God directly. They have to go through the king. That is where the king has that prestige, because he is the great-great-grandson of God, and the feudal lord have been created by him or by his ancestors. So the privilege of the feudal lords is to pray to the spirit of the mountains or the spirit of the rivers of his principality, but not to God directly. And when the kings die, he ascends to heaven to be with his ancestor, which is also the creator of the universe.
So Taoism.
Okay, let me stop up here. Okay, so I would say, okay, well, I totally agree with what Kwang is talking about. But the question here is this paragraph, this chapter, does this chapter follow the tradition or not? That's a question mark.
No,
Because
That's kind of
no.
where I'm coming from.
No,
Okay.
exactly. I want to. It's exactly what I said.
Okay.
Let's say
yeah,
about
because
10
this
minutes
one,
ago.
this text is on the southern part. So it may or may not follow the tradition. Okay. My understanding is it may not follow the tradition. Secondly, this one may produce much later time. It's not like
Exactly.
400 BC, could be much later. So
Yes.
that's why a lot of argument, which one is right, which one is wrong, we don't know. Okay. So
No, but
Now I
the
appreciate
point
that because that
that
brings both ideas together. It was an older idea at this time. It may or may not have been descended from that, and I do think
that's right.
Taoism tends to be kind of, it is the
You
universe. It's not.
could be talking about
It's almost
different
in contrast to that, but he's still using the words because it's part of the language.
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
So
thank you.
But the thing that I want to add again is that don't mix the feudal religion, which was a construct for justifying the political order, and the idea in the Tao Te Ching, who are much more generous. I wouldn't use a strange word, the one associated with the Tao Te Ching, but the ideas in the Tao Te Ching are much more democratic than the feudal order of the time.
Makes sense.
okay, yeah, that's
Thank you.
great. Thank you. Yeah. So it's not like one voice. Okay. It could Dao De Jing may talk about against it. It may just ignore the tradition. So we don't know. That's why the beauty of reading this one, because you can interpret. Okay. What would be the right way to read it? We have Faham Joe. Okay. Then we need to move on. The rule we are doing is we need to do at least the 2 chapters. Okay, so otherwise we will hang in there forever. So go ahead, please.
Sorry, I wanted to again get back to the concept of control and
Okay,
the
go ahead.
concept of like spirit or sacred that we discussed. I think
Okay.
let's not very much focus on the words. Let's focus on the meaning and the relation that is being communicated underneath. The sacred or the spirit or whatever you want to put in there, it's a mystery, and it's proposing that the world is a mystery, or in other words, is an unknown, which you who are wishing to control it cannot control it because you cannot know it. We can control things that we know, and we cannot control the world because it is unknown, because it has a mysterious property to it, either mystical through being a spiritual thing or a sacred thing, but it's a mystery. And this mysterious thing, again, like you are the one who should be one with it, not it be one with you. If you who are aspiring to control it, want to tame it to become one with you, the you, which is your ego, which is the construct of your perspective, which is non-existent in the actual reality. The actual thing that has to happen is for you to be one with the world. That means eliminating the ego and just become one with the world. So yeah, again, like the more I read into it, I think it's more in line with like again, like many other religious teachings, and I don't read too much into the historical relation to the text. I think the text on its own is communicating a very precise meaning. It's a very like spiritual teaching, and fits tightly with very profound teachings of many other religions. Not many, like at least 4 other religions. Yeah, that's just I wanted to add.
Yeah, thank you, Faham. Yeah, I have to say this Dao De Jing, good thing is probably don't mention about historical account. They don't mention any location, any person's name, emperor's name, unlike a Chinese analect. You need to know what's not always, sometimes Confucius or his disciple will mention this country, this emperor, this guy. So you have a lot of historical background to study. Okay, but this one has nothing about this. Okay, so that's the advantage for everybody to read it without a strong or any idea of a Chinese history. But
And
the
maybe
just one minute, the disadvantage is just like the argument. Okay, what's the meaning of the spiritual being? Because we don't know what's the time frame, so we could have a different meaning on that. So that's the difference. Okay, go ahead, Faham. You have anything to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, like, that's what I think, to me, that's what sets Dao De Ching apart from any other
That's
text,
true.
because
Yeah.
it's not connecting to any specific location or period of time for a reason, because it's a much deeper, again, concept that is being communicated. It's present everywhere. It doesn't need a location or a reference in time. It's everywhere, every time, all the time, and you just need to tap into your inner, world to find it. So I think it's you should just go in yourself and see where it fits.
Yeah, great. Thank you. We have a Joe and a Mark. Then I have to move on. Okay, Joe, please.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll be quick. I mean, I think that this highlights something very specific here. And that is, what's your approach to the translation overall? I mean, we can kind of talk back and forth about what it means. And, I think that that's really important, but are you going to do a literal translation? And coming back to what Mark's word or question was, or whatever it was, or whoever it was the idea of like how the concepts don't necessarily map on one to one. And so I put something in the chat, was the idea of Shen, and Quillette, and in Judaism, and how the meaning of it, they both speak to the fact of the spirit of being, or the breath and wind of the spirit. But the thing is that you can kind of translate these words, the life force, if you will, from the Taoist perspective, or and Quillette would in Judaism. The big thing, the difference is that one is really focused on the more existential, like kind of, I mean, kind of more of a not as it actually is like the Taoists look at it, as far as more holistic, as you're actually integrated with the universe. And the reason why that's important is because obviously you get into the idea of what it means to be conscious. So this is actually where, but I mean, ultimately we could talk about back and forth, but it really matters how you're going to have a discussion about the approach to the translation. And then from there, you can kind of like really break things out and, see why one person translates it into one word versus one person translating it into another. Yeah, I mean, but I think that that's really, you're capturing the nuance of the culture itself as well. But interesting comments, but I think it really highlights the importance of translation, but also stating as to what the approach was. And I don't know, Nick maybe brought up, you have to look at what the function of the word, what they were trying to say. So somebody that's kind of a purist would be like, well, or literalist would, be like, well, that doesn't work. And they would be wrong.
Thank you, Joe. Mark, please.
Yeah, thanks. I found Faham's comments pretty interesting and thought-provoking for me. And I think I agree that there are a lot of similarities, at least with, I'm most familiar with Christianity, and to a lesser extent Judaism and Islam. And I see some similarities. I mean, my understanding is the word Islam itself means surrender, something to that account, which you could make a correlation of that with wu-wei. So I do see some similarities there, but I also think there are some significant differences in that those three religions, or at least Christianity, which I'm the most familiar with, have this very kind of hierarchical sense that there's this supreme being on top that is, in Christianity, is often described as Lord or King, similar to Shangdi in the ancient Shang religion. Whereas the Tao, in general, it's not described as being on top. In fact, if anything, it's on the bottom. It's at the lowest point. So there's a similarity I think, in the sense of perceiving the futility of human arrogance. But the reasoning behind the advocacy of the abandonment of that arrogance, I think, is a little different in flavor. In fact, it's almost reversed, but functionally it's very similar. So that's the comment I wanted to make. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mark. Okay, so let's move on. Chapter 30. Okay. Okay, so raise your hand if you want to read any translation. Okay, I know Kwang want to read. Please, thank you.
Okay, so translation by Professor Mose Roberts, stanza 30. Those who guide their leaders by the way will not urge war to dominate the world, for such a course is bound to haunt its taker. Fields where armies camp grow thorns and weeds, and plague and famine follow every war. With the fruits of victory desist, never seek to break a burden foe, and flaunt no prowess with the victory. Assert no strength, show no pride. Be a victor against your will, a victor who will not dominate. Beware old age in pride of manly might. This warns to work not against the way. Work against the way, die before your day.
Thank you, Kwang. Steve, please.
I'm going to immediately go out on a limb here and say that I'm probably going to like your translation a lot better than this one. So the one I have is DC Lau.
Well, I have to say, DC Lau is a good translation. If you are the first time, it's not honest. Honor to the original.
Yeah,
I have to ask, is it DC Lau's first translation, or is it his translation of the Malung Doi script, or does it even say?
I would have to investigate that. I don't know the answer.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
When you read, I may be able to tell
in general, this one's okay. This particular one and the last one are, I don't know. Sometimes it gets a little too poetic for his own good, in my opinion. But anyway. So this one says, one who assists the ruler of men by means of the way does not intimidate the empire by a show of arms. This is something which is liable to rebound. Where troops have encamped, there will brambles grow. In the wake of a mighty army, bad harvests follow without fail. One who is good aims only at bringing his campaign to a conclusion and dare not thereby intimidate. Bring it to a conclusion, but do not boast. Bring it to a conclusion, but do not brag. Bring it to a conclusion, but do not be arrogant. Bring it to a conclusion, but only when there is no choice. Bring it to a conclusion, but do not intimidate. A creature in its prime doing harm to the old is known as going against the way. That which goes against the way will come to an early end.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, Joe, please.
Yeah, so I'll stick with the GFO fact. Whenever you advise a ruler in the way of the Tao, counsel him not to use force to conquer the universe, for this would only cause resistance. Thorn bushes spring up whenever or wherever the army has passed. Lean years follow in the wake of a great war. Just do what needs to be done. Never take advantage of power. Achieve results, but never glory in them. Achieve results, but never boast. Achieve results, but never be proud. Achieve results, because this is the natural way. Achieve results, but not through violence. Trying to scroll here. Force is followed by loss of strength. This is not the way of the Tao. That which goes against the Tao comes to an end, an early end.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, so let's go ahead.
I have to confess, I'm always tickled when Jason keeps my comments. Chapter 30, without the Tao. Those who use the Tao to assist the rulers wouldn't use military force to coerce the world. They return after the mission is complete. When troops camp, brambles grow. Where troops camp, brambles grow. After a major war, ominous years follow. It is good to achieve the result and stop. Dare not to gain and coerce the world. Achieve results without arrogance. Achieve results without boasting. Achieve results without pride. Achieve results only when there is no other choice. Achieve results without coercing. To strengthen a thing is to hasten its age. This is not following the Tao. Without the Tao, things come to an early end.
Thank you, Amang. Okay, I do see this one kind of a continue from the previous chapter. It's talking about, I think the previous one talking, I believe is speaking to the prince, the prince or the ruler. And this one either speak to the prince or talking about to the advisor who has advice to the ruler. And secondly, I think this chapter is tightly related to the art of war. I think some of you already read the art of war. Okay, so it's kind of not against using the military force, but you can use the military force, but you need to know how dangerous, okay, what's the cost, what's the price you have to pay for the military cost, the military operation. And when you do the military operation, you need to be very clear what's the result. So if you read the Chinese character, this word called guo, okay, how many guo we have? San you guo, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 guo, okay. In the this word means fruit. So that's why some translation translate as a fruit. And I heard some translate as conclusion. Okay. So I will translate as achieve result. Okay. So basics is talking about the military operation and tell you how dangerous, right? Whenever troops camp, brambles grow. After a major war, ominous year follow. This 2 lines become very famous saying through the history to war. Any operation, military operation, they all cause a lot of damage. Even you win the war, you still have a lot of cost on either side. So tell the ruler, be careful to do the military operation. And you have to be very clear about the result you want to achieve. Okay, so you have to achieve the result without arrogance, achieve result without boasting, achieve result without pride, achieve result only when there is no other choice, achieve result without coercing. Okay, so I think that's very good advice about the military operation. And to the end, as usual, the Dao De Jing always also, other than the political advice, also give you some life lesson. Okay, tell you. Okay, so make things strong, strength a thing is to hasten its age. Okay, so it's the idea is when any organism, any animal, when you grow strong, so for example, you in the mid age, you become much stronger. That means you also toward to the old age. So kind of to give you evidence. Okay, everything, if you become stronger, that also start to age. So ask you to be careful to use military force or to use the physical force to go strong. Okay, so that's the and they so without the Tao, things come to the early end. So that's the advice on this one. So Aman, I'll hear from you about the.
Oops, sorry about that. I was responding to Steve in chat real quick. And I'll address another comment in chat here in a moment. But like I said, here's a little peek in the sausage being made, and I absolutely appreciate every time Jason retains one of these because you guys get a sneak peek into our process where he translates the text, I give input, it gets revised, we present you guys with our product. And then we do revisions again sometimes based on the feedback we get here in these meetings. So you all have been a process in this, or a part of this process, and I'm grateful for it. I really was tempted to take that last line or that second to last line, this is not following the Tao, and make the suggestion that this isn't not in accord with the Tao, mostly because of how we've been translating Wei as a to be called. But I do think that it is more concise to say this is not following the Tao, and concise phrasing is a choice that we make sometimes to use terms like achieve as opposed to fruition, which I agree, fruition would be an excellent way to translate that. But then you have to add English words to make it make sense. Bring to fruition without results, without arrogance. That is an additional 3 words that don't exist in the traditional Chinese. And so trying to keep our translations concise so that some of the pacing feels similar to reading the traditional Chinese is also a choice that we've made. Since we'll probably go right up to the wire, and I don't want to jump on over anyone, I'm going to take one last minute and the prerogative of co-hosting. This chapter also is a lesson in wu-wei. And here, I wish Faham hadn't dropped off because I would have gotten a chance to voice my disagreement. Wu-wei is not submission. It is not complete lack of doing. It is doing enough and only enough. That is where that line, it is good to achieve the result and stop. The first introduction of wu-wei is wei wu-wei. Action without action. Achieving without achieving. Doing without doing. Doing just enough so that you achieve what you're after, but not a penny more. It is not to simply go with the flow in an absolute laissez-faire sense. It is to recognize the flow, to merge with it enough that the least amount of effort on your part still gets you the result you want. And as an anecdote to this, I was on a weekend trip floating, inner tubing a river with a bunch of friends. And if you've ever done it, everybody's in an inner tube, sunny, beautiful. You put your cell phone in a waterproof pouch, you take pictures, it's beautiful. Well, at one point we hit a little bit of rapids, so I lifted my butt to make sure I didn't wind up with bruises. Others did not, they're bruised. One caught my phone and threw it into the water. And there was panic amongst my companions because, oh my God, your phone has been lost to the river. My phone's in the river. We're in the river. Everything is going this way. I see it. Be patient. And as some actually leapt from their tubes trying to swim to get it, I just gave a little flick to turn my tube and grab it when it sailed by, because that's all the more effort that was required to get the result that everybody else spent way too much energy worrying about. This is wu-wei. You don't simply give over to the flow. You do enough to get what you need, but then no more, because then you have more in reserve should you need more later. That is the lesson he's teaching here as well. Not to roll over to your neighbors when they are encamped at your doorstep, but make sure that you understand the real cost of what you're going to do, and that if it's going to be a major war, there's ominous years that will follow. All right, that's it for me. Now I want to hear you.
All right, thank you, Amon. Joe and Kwang. Joe, please.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be brief because I think that actually Amon actually captured it really well. It is this idea of just doing what needs to be done and nothing more. Quite frankly, I think it's very similar to the concept of justice in the West, so that, you know, because justice actually restores some degree of harmony. It is not over, you know, overcompensating for when you're having to do something. It's the right measure for which you're, you know, whatever you're responding to. So, I mean, when we think about these other, even the translations themselves, where we're talking about where arrogance, pride, and these are all emotions. And so when you're advising a prince, that you're advising him to take the emotion out of this and actually just look at it for what it is, and not necessarily just distort your own perspective on it. And what this does do is that kind of like essentially enables you to you know, respond in a way that doesn't really create a cyclical like a cycle where each group is trying to get back at one another. It stops the cycle. So, I mean, it's, if you think about this, even on it, your personal relationships, that how you don't even necessarily need to be running a state. You could actually just be, your interactions need to be just. Not totally dissimilar to what I was saying, even, you know, previously. It's this kind of idea of harmony. If you're listening to someone as opposed to trying to dominate them, and the domination is like is essentially overdoing it, you know, or trying to control the situation. And when you look at it from that perspective, you know, the idea of something like justice is this balance where you're just responding when you need to respond, as opposed to going too far. So it's right measure, ultimately.
All right, thank you, Joe. Kwang, please.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything that has been said in the last 10 minutes. I would like to express it in another way, okay? Wu-wei is the capacity to respond and not to react, okay? A reaction is precisely an emotionally charged action. And I would make the rapprochement with the concept of karma, okay? The concept of karma, as understood in Buddhist psychology, is that when you are doing or saying something with unawareness, and when you are doing things with unawareness of the unawareness of yourself, of the other, of the situation, it will provoke unintended consequences. And what Joe, you said about the chain reaction. And wu-wei is precisely that. You are aware in your response to the situation, but it is not a reaction. Before I forget, Joe, what is the translation that you read? Because I thought it was a very good translation.
Oh, that was Jia Fufang.
Jifu Fang, okay.
Yeah.
Because your translation was spot on that idea of reaction versus responsibility, okay? Because responsibility can be divided in two: response ability, okay? The ability to respond rather than to react. I would like also to say that Wu Wei most of the time is explained in a too much grandiose manner, okay? Because Wei in ancient Chinese mean intention. So Wu Wei means the action with no intention, in the sense of no intention coming from the ego. Why I say that it's too grandiose rather than to be responsible? It's too grandiose because it implies that you would be in infinite awareness, okay? And I claim that it's possible to be Wu Wei and not necessarily being at the highest level of awareness. And the practical example that Aman gave, it's just perfect, okay? He lost his iPhone in the river. He thought that it would be possible to take it back with skillful movements rather than panicking and jumping in the river. And he has done exactly what was needed, but his intention is to take back his iPhone, okay? So that Wu Wei has been directed by an intention to take back his iPhone. And I will finish by an example that we discussed, I think, many months ago about pacifism. The question was, is Taoism a pacifist doctrine? And I remember vaguely our conversation that Taoism is a doctrine of awareness. It's not a doctrine advocating not to go to war, because in certain situations, the responsible answer is to go to war. But that decision to go to war has been seriously thought with all the consequences, because sometimes it would be cowardly or craven or inappropriate for your own good and for your own interest not to go to war. So Taoism is a doctrine of awareness and not of pacifism. I stop here.
Yeah, thank you, Kwang. Regarding the war, we don't have the chance to go to 31, but next week it's continue about the war. So I will see if you are interested, the next week continue talk about war. Second thing about Wu Wei. Wu Wei is a big subject, and again, you may pay attention. We don't translate the Wu Wei as a non-action or anything, because we want to keep the original song as Wu Wei. So that will be open up for you to understand how to practice Wu Wei. So thank you again. Zach, please.
Yes, thank you, Kwan and Aman. I'm fairly new to these ideas, so that distinction was very helpful. And like you said, Jason, not defining Wu Wei as non-action, I think that already really helps. Maybe just defining it as not extraneous action or unnecessary action. I had two thoughts about it. One is it relates directly to the text. Jason, would you mind sharing the your translation again? Because I prefer that to the one that I have. Yeah, so the idea of achieve results without arrogance, achieve results without boasting. I mean, maybe this is obvious to everybody else, but I just made that connection that, the moment you're boasting, that is out of accordance with Wu Wei. The boasting is not necessary to achieve the results. It is something added, something extra. Along those lines as well, I recently read the book, The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life by Irving Goffman, who was a sociologist, and he talked about a phenomenon called dramatization, which is where basically the idea was like some jobs in particular are not clear to other people observing that that person is engaged in that job. So they will actually like dramatize what they're doing. Like it's not enough to just do the thing, you know, they're actually like kind of making a show. And I think this is a great example of somebody who is not in wu-wei, like somebody who is really just like hamming it up at the fact that like, oh, I'm changing this tire. I got to make sure that everybody sees that I'm changing this tire, as opposed to just changing it. Or somebody that's like in the gym, you know, really grunting and making a whole show when they're lifting the barbell. I don't know. I just think this is such an interesting concept of how much kind of extraneous energy, how much kind of wasted energy goes into the performance piece rather than the doing. And I guess that book for me kind of helped to separate the act and the performance of the act. And I think this fits in really well here with there's the achieving the results and there's the boasting about the results that have been achieved. And I think, yeah, I don't know. I think that's great to kind of separate these things as this is extra. This is in addition to achieving the results itself. Again, to your point, it's not doing nothing, but it is doing what is necessary and nothing more.
Thank you, Zach. Great comment. Paul, please.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. I want to just point out some things about this that occurred to me from hearing, for instance, Kwan's comment about how the Tao is democratic. And you just took it off the screen. You don't have to put it back on, but you'll notice coerce is used, I think, 3 times. So you can take this as just a regular person who is not a military ruler or an assistant to one and apply it to your life. Because it's so non-specific, as you mentioned before, Jason, it makes it accessible. So it's very easy to apply it to whether or not what kind of force you should use to coerce or convince your housemate to do the dishes. I'm applying it to the most trivial and just pointing out how valuable it is in that respect, unlike other texts. It's just like, it's abstract enough to bring it right down to your life. And that's maybe one of the powers of it. So just another way pointing that out.
Thank you, Paul. Okay. Yeah, you notice this. I put coerce 3 times because Chinese word. That's the kind of I try to stick on that because the qiang, this word, I either translate as a strength and as a verb, I will translate as a coerce. That means use force to push other people to obey. Okay, so there, please.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, this is just a thought that was stimulated by Zachary's comment. I thought that was very interesting. So just 2 things about that. The first thing is that I'm a fan of Irving Goffman. That's a great text, and he also wrote this other book, which is actually I think even better. It's more theoretical, but it's better because presentation of self in everyday life is I think is very descriptive. Whereas in his other book, Behavior in Public Places, is this an amazing microsociological book, microsociological theory, and but there he kind of he gets deeper into the theory of it, and he actually says something like how the display, the dramatization is actually part of what makes social life go. Like we sort of have to, like he talks about various social settings like funerals and weddings, but also just like working at the office. And he's suggesting that we sort of have to do little bits of dramatization in order to sort of coordinate our social life and all get along. So I think that's interesting. And I want to tie this back with this text and also the history of Taoism, is that I wonder if like some of these ideas we're discussing regarding this chapter, some of this might also present as a contrast to Confucianism, because I mean, Confucianism is like the dominant, is way more dominant in Chinese history and culture and influence than Taoism. Although of course Taoism does have its influence. Like the main strand has always been Confucianism, though. And Confucianism, at least this is the critique of Confucius and Confucianists, right? Is that it's a lot of it is about display and ritual and just point. Like this is, you see this in elsewhere in the Tao Te Ching, right? It's like Confucianism, it's about all these pointless rituals and displays, and it's not about actual substance. So anyway, I just like I just thought like Zachary's comment was quite interesting. It just stimulated the possibility that yeah, that or at least for so a Confucian's perspective on this would be that would be kind of like Goffman's, in at least in this theoretical work. The dramatization, all this like acting up, is not necessarily a bad thing, although you can obviously take it to an extreme. It actually makes social life go, which actually kind of sounds like Confucian, like at least one interpretation of Confucianism and his interest and his emphasis on rituals and displays of, you know, deference and hierarchy and all that stuff. So anyway, I'm just like, these are just like random thoughts, but it was just like because of what Zachary said, I thought it might be interesting for people to think about.
Yeah, thank you, Darren. Yeah, Zach make the words, well, provide the words dramatization. Yeah, and I also immediately think about Confucianism, but Confucian scholar like Kwang may argue.
However, before you go on,
right.
I just want to point out, if you've ever been to a Taoist ceremony of any kind, they have that's a glass house throwing some stones.
Yeah, so again, that's a long story. We can talk about this one for many hours, because Taoism is supposed to be against the dramatization or ritualistic performance. But if you go to today's Taoism temple, probably you will see a lot of ritualistic ceremony, a lot of the, which is different than what you read in Dao De Jing. So that's an interesting subject. And then I will say Confucius will say, yeah, dramatization should do it in proper way, okay, into the just right, not in a way to show off, but in a way to influence other people. For example, your beloved one died. Taoism, especially if you read the Zhuangzi, will say, no need to cry, he's dead, she's dead. So, you know, back to nature. But Confucius will say, no, you have to cry, you have to show your sadness. Then, you know,
for 2 years. For 2 years.
Depends on who she is. Your parents is 3 years. So
yeah. Sorry, I meant 3 years, right?
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, we are toward to the end. We will have some comment and we will close shortly. So Huang.
Yes, I just want to say that Confucianism is the king's game, okay? The game of the king. So it's normal that there are rituals because the king or the emperor need the rituals to sustain his reality. But it doesn't mean that it is not also, it's also an invitation to awareness. However, Confucianism is a doctrine for creating the empire, and Taoism, a philosophical Taoism, okay? Because ritual Taoism has always been promoted by the kings and the emperors. So I would say that ritual Taoism is much closer, paradoxically, to Confucianism. But when we take philosophical Taoism, meaning the Taoism that we are reading here in the Tao Te Ching, that is simply an invitation to anarchy. And anarchy doesn't mean disorder. Anarchy means ake, okay? Absence of rulers, absence of commanders. So the Tao Te Ching is an invitation to a very advanced society that is still an utopia right now. I stop for now.
Yeah, thank you. The Taoism utopia famous saying is, I work when the sun rises, I rest when the sun set. I don't care who is the king. So, so that's you can say the Tao is a utopian. Mark?
Absolutely. That's anarchy.
Anarchy also equal to utopian. So that's the
Thanks,
Mark,
Jason.
please.
Yeah, I really like Juan's description of the difference between Taoism and Confucianism. And I also wanted to emphasize something I think is kind of important. Is that in English, often people talk about philosophical Taoism and religious Taoism. And I even heard one religious scholar who actually did a YouTube video on Taoism say this like was a Western anachronism, that way of describing it, which from my understanding, that's completely wrong. There's separate Chinese words, Dao Jia and Dao Jiao, and the original philosophical Taoism associated with the Tao Te Ching, the Zhuangzi, and some other works, I think, my understanding is, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, that what's called Dao Jiao didn't arise for hundreds of years later, when this idea of like immortality and the deification of Lao Tzu and all that stuff came way, way later, and there's nothing like that in the Tao Te Ching. So what is called in modern times Taoism, my understanding is by far dominated by ideas of Dao Jiao and not Dao Jia. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I think Aman left. Okay, so Aman will be the best person to answer this question, because not only he is a philosophical Taoist, and he also an ordained Taoist priest. So he is both Tao philosopher and Tao Jia religious priest. So anyway, Joe, and we'll probably need to finish for today. Joe.
Yeah, I'm talking with mute on. Yeah, just coming. Kwan's actually his comment. And I'd like to hear it maybe next week, whatever. The thought on it's this utopia that hasn't yet exist, where there's actually no rulers. And in Zeno's Republic, which is actually much less, a lesser known text by Zeno, from Obsidian, is essentially a city of sages, where everybody is actually understanding like how to act and how to behave, and to do so in a way that is actually so that there are no need for hierarchy and rulers. Is that probably, I don't know if you're familiar with Zeno's Republic, but is that probably the same way of capturing what you were just saying about the Tao?
Yes, absolutely. And if we take communism as the theoretical level, okay, I'm not speaking of the CPC or of the state, but if you take the idea of communism at the theoretical basis, wow, it's also an invitation to that radical equality and freedom and wisdom, right?
Yeah, and it's also, this is where it has, everybody's wise. So yeah, that's
Yes.
why, that's the equality aspect of it. That's interesting. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Okay, great. Okay, so we end with utopian today. So that's a great idea for today. So next week, same time, we'll continue on the chapter 31 and 32, 33. And thank you, everyone. And we will continue until we reach chapter 37. And then that will finish our second round of translation. And we still have a lot of support, a lot of people come in. And thank you, everyone. Have a different opinion, agree, disagree. We are all practice Taoism. We will see, I think everyone here all practice Taoism idea. We agree or disagree. We all not try to coerce other people to obey. So that's a great sign. So thank you and see you next week. Bye.
Very
Thanks,
much.
Jason.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
See y'all.
We don't coerce just because